This is an international relations podcast by the students, for the students, and of the students. Today, we have Krishna with us, and she is a final year MBA student at the University of Mumbai. She has also been a speaker at UN headquarters in New York and a research coordinator at Christ University. She is interested in writing and digital arts. She has been studying Sri Lanka for a while, and we would like to know more about Sri Lanka from her. So, welcome, Krishna.
Thank you, Srishti, for that warm welcome.
So, can you give us a brief oversight on Sri Lanka and what do you think of the country?
Sri Lanka is a beautiful island nation located in the Indian Ocean. It is separated from the peninsular India by the Park Strait. It has deep cultural history in the region, which interlinks many South Asian countries with a vibrant ancient and medieval period following a European colonization period to independence, a civil war, and then road to democracy and economic recovery. Sri Lanka's strategic location makes it very attractive as it lies at the crossroads of major Indian Ocean sea lanes though through which a significant portion of the world's energy supplies and trade passes, making it a critical hub for maritime security and trade connectivity. So, today we'll be talking about how Sri Lanka navigates and takes control of its strategic location and its economic recovery.
So, what do you think were the major political challenges or scenarios that have shaped the current politics of Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka's present government was formed in 2024 following a widespread protest which started back in 2022 against economic mismanagement again under the Rajapaksa administration. This was a major event in Sri Lanka with its economy taking a deep hit, contracting by 7.3% according to the World Bank reports. It also defaulted on its debt for the first time in history. So we know it was a terrible situation in Sri Lanka. There were also notable human rights violations leading to international coverage. This culminated in the rise of Anura Kumara as the president, representing a shift away from the established political parties. Ananda Kumara's victory was met with broad support from the international community, from the US president to the Chinese president, even the Indian prime minister. The National People's Party, with which the president is the head of, is currently the ruling alliance. Despite being left leaning, it is motivated to edit the errors of the past by welcoming more FDIs, collaborations in different sectors, and renew underperforming state owned enterprises through a public private partnership. The minister subsequently appointed Harini Amarasuriya, one of the three NPP members in the parliament, as prime minister. She is one of the first women to hold the positions in more than 2 decades. The administration has also prioritized restoring trust through measures like the 21st Constitutional Amendment, which curtails presidential powers and strengthens the parliament. A new and also initiate anti-corruption mechanism largely aimed at restoring political accountability required for unlocking IMF assistance.
That was interesting. So, what do you think is the status of the current economy there?
Sri Lanka's post-crisis economy has rebounded. Growth reached approximately 5% in 2024, while inflation dropped to single digits before slightly turning negative in early 2025. A combination of internal and external reforms have supported this recovery. One of the key drivers is tourism, which has picked up significantly, particularly from tourists from India, China, and Russia, with the government easing visa rules and investing in tourism zones. Visitors from South Asian countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan have also increased. Another major contributor is construction and infrastructure development, especially through public private partnerships and foreign funded projects. Port City Colombo, for example, has attracted international investors and is being positioned as a future financial hub. Similarly, Hambantota Port and Matala Airport are gaining new momentum through asset leasing and logistical partnership, particularly with Chinese, Japanese, and Middle Eastern firms. The apparel industry is one of Sri Lanka's largest exporters. It continues to be a cornerstone of economic resilience. They also open themselves up to international collaboration, especially with nations like Australia and the United Kingdom. Likewise, tea exports also remain a vital foreign earner. Remittance from overseas workers, especially in the Gulf and South Korea, remain another strong pillar, bringing in over $5 billion annually, stabilizing household consumption and forex reserves. The energy sector is also opening up with India and UAE and other foreign actors investing in solar, wind, and grid interconnection projects. So I would say these are the pillars in which Sri Lanka's economy depends on.
What are the current economic challenges and what are the policies for the same?
So, as I said, Sri Lanka's economy is showing signs of recovery. Even then, it still faces significant structural and financial challenges. One of the most pressing being its high public debt, which still retains to 96% of its GDP. The government is currently engaged in restructuring processes supported by the IMF. The most recent example is its debt restructuring with Saudi Arabia. It's also looking at innovative ways for repayment of its debt. For example, is the T4 oil deal of 2021 with Iran, where Sri Lanka repaid 20 million debt with Iran with an equivalent export of tea. I feel like these are very creative ways the government has addressed the gap in its public debt. The economy also remains vulnerable to global shocks. For instance, the US tariffs, which was initially 44%, but then negotiated down to 20% on goods like apparel, would have a high effect on such vital sectors, especially around employment and cost concerns. One way the government is trying to overcome this is by diversifying its markets. It's looking into African and European nations as potential markets. Similarly, fluctuations in global tourism, whether due to pandemics or geopolitical risk, can quickly strain foreign reserves. In response, the country is actively seeking foreign direct investments, especially in ports, airports, and the mineral sector. It's looking into rare earth minerals, graphite, which could become strategic exports in the future. Sri Lanka is also expanding its free trade agreements, including those with India, ASEAN, and China. It's also launching a new development bank to support MSMEs and protect and promote its local entrepreneurship. However, there is a challenge that comes with increasing FDIs, especially there is noticeable pushback against active privatization and FDIs in the nation among the local people. So the recent news of privatization of Sri Lankan Airlines, which was met with widespread public unease, is an example of this. So the public unease subsequently led to the plan being scrapped and the locals questioning the ideological inclination of the left-leaning NPP. There are also fears of neo-colonialism that is prevalent with the protests back in 2017 when Hanbantota port was leased over to China for 99 years. And it's also a relevant conversation now, as recently as this year when the Adani Point project was discontinued over fears of national security. The government has responded to this sensitivity by rebranding privatization as restructuring or public private partnership to ease resistance from the locals. It is also trying to improve transparency and engage stakeholders early, especially around state owned enterprise prices reforms and IMF conditions.
So, how is Sri Lanka's overall healthcare system functioning, and how accessible it is to the general public?
Sri Lanka maintains a universal public healthcare system under the Ministry of Health, offering free services nationwide. Accessibility remains high compared to other South Asian countries, with around 95% of its population living within 5 kilometers of a healthcare facility. However, there are regional disparities that we can see. The western, southern, and central provinces tend to have better equipped hospitals and more medical personnel, while the northern and eastern provinces, historically affected by civil conflict, still face shortages of facilities. Yet, despite high accessibility, resource constraints persist. Sri Lanka is currently grappling with acute shortage of essential medicines. The health minister has acknowledged the problem and is looking at varied ways of covering the existing gap. One way of doing that is through direct procurement on a government to government basis. So they have sent over a list of essential medicines to foreign governments, including India, looking to meet that gap. Um, there was, however, a local pushback with the nation's pharmaceutical industry raising concerns over potential substandardized medicines entering the country and the impact of it on local manufacturing and supply. In order to reduce this concern and also ensure equitable and affordable access to healthcare and medicines, the government is pushing the State Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Corporation to scale up local production by 2026. So, since domestic firms can deliver much faster than government to government deals, this is a much better way forward, is what I feel. Sri Lanka's healthcare system is also facing critical shortage of medical staff, especially doctors. After the 2022 economic crisis, we can see nearly 10% of government employed doctors have left the country. And with more prepared to follow. So the government has taken many policy decisions to discourage this, but the effectiveness is often challenged. So while Sri Lanka's healthcare achieves strong outcome, there are certain structural and resource challenges that still need to be addressed.
What do you think are the defense and security priorities for Sri Lanka, being a maritime neighbor of India and also being surrounded by waters on all four sides?
So, the country's defense posture has been significantly shaped by its nearly 3 decade long civil war, which ended in 2009. As a result, the military remained highly influential both in terms of manpower and political presence. The military not only plays a role in defense, but is also involved in civil administration, disaster response, and even economic ventures such as construction and agriculture. On the law enforcement side, the Sri Lankan Police Service is the primary agency for maintaining internal law and order. After the 2019 Easter Sunday attacks, however, national security strategy shifted to emphasize counterterrorism, intelligence coordination, and religious radicalization prevention as a major security uh, need. So, establishing units like Terrorist Investigation Division and Special Task Force was inevitable and necessary. Uh, However, the state has also been criticized often for using such national security forces as a pretext to suppress dissent and restrict civil liberties, especially during the 2022 economic protest. More recently, Sri Lanka has started integrating maritime security into its defense strategy, which is very important as an island nation. It has started collaborating with regional partners like India, US, Japan to secure Indian Ocean sea lanes and counter transnational threats like piracy and drug trafficking. Sri Lanka's military expenditure is considerably lower compared to its past levels. For example, now it's around 1.43% of its GDP, which is a significant drop from its peak civil war years, which accounts to almost 6% of its GDP. This reduction in spending is a reflection of this country's shifting ideology from a full blown war footing to a more peacetime security posture, even as it continues to grapple with new and complex threats.
Do you think there are any internal or external security threats for Sri Lanka?
So I'll start with internal threats. First and foremost, a major issue is the lingering threat of terrorism and extremism. The 2019 Easter Sunday attack, as I mentioned, was a horrific reminder that even with this civil war over, extremist ideology can take root and have devastating consequences. While the threat from the LTT's armed wing is no longer a major concern, the ideology of Tamil separatism still exists among some groups, particularly in the international diaspora. This is a crucial point because it shows how old conflicts can often morph into new challenges. Then we have the economic and political instability that has been a defining feature of Sri Lanka in recent years. The massive economic crisis of 2022, as mentioned before, which led to widespread protests and a change in the government, highlights a different kind of security threat that stems from a state's own governance and economic mismanagement. Another concern is Sri Lanka's coastlines. It can become a hub for illicit activities. There are also growing concerns about cybersecurity and cyber terrorism. As a nation becomes more digitally connected, its vital infrastructure becomes a potential target for hackers and malicious actors. So, Sri Lanka needs to take an active role in countering such threats. Now, coming to external threats, the most significant threat I feel in the country is the geopolitical rivalry between major powers, particularly between China and India in the Indian Ocean. Sri Lanka sits at a crucial east west shipping route, making it highly valuable for any nation with regional ambition. We've seen this play out with leasing of Anbantota port to China, a move that raised concerns all over the world, including in New Delhi. Related to this, there is also an issue of non-traditional maritime threats. We are talking about illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing that affects the livelihood of local fishermen. There are also transnational crimes like human smuggling and arms trafficking that threaten Sri Lanka. And finally, we have to mention climate change, especially for an island nation like Sri Lanka. It absolutely is a problem. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and natural disasters like floods and landslides can displace community, damage critical infrastructure, and also strain government resources, creating a cascade of security challenges.
Who, according to you, are the major foreign policy players in and around Sri Lanka? And what do you think are the major foreign policy priorities for Sri Lanka?
So when the president took charge of the country right after the economic crisis, his statements and actions suggest an overall pragmatic and balanced approach to foreign relations, particularly in recalibrating ties with regional and international players. Um, he does not want Sri Lanka to be sandwiched between India and China, in his own words. Given its geostrategic location in Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka sees itself as a connectivity hub linking east to the west. So naturally, it seeks to keep good relations with all major powers without leaning too heavily toward any single bloc. One of the biggest priorities, of course, is economic diplomacy. After the 2022 crisis, Sri Lanka is heavily focused on attracting FDIs, expanding bilateral trade, and gaining debt restructuring support. The IMF extended fund facility it secured in 2023 is a cornerstone of this effort, but it's also seeking support from creditor nations like India, China, Japan, and members of the Paris Club. In terms of alliance, India, of course, remains a vital player. We've seen this play out with India's rapid assistance during Sri Lanka's fuel and medical shortage, over $4 billion in aid, and continued efforts to support infrastructure developments in port and renewable energy. China also is a major player, especially through investments. Sri Lanka is also increasing its interaction with other countries outside of these two powerful nations, like through interacting with Japan, USA, South Korea, UK, and the EU. In Asia, it has also extended contact with countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, ASEAN, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Sri Lanka largely focuses on technological transfer and a market for its manufactured goods. IT sector is one among the cooperation sectors for Sri Lanka, with the nation engaging in extensive tech transfer programs to boost its connectivity. Starlink was recently welcomed into the country, marking island-wide access to internet. We'll have to wait and see how this welcome will work out in Sri Lanka's favor. Ultimately, I would like to say that Sri Lanka is pursuing what I would call a multi-vector foreign policy that places its economic recovery and sovereignty in the center by leveraging its location as a regional hub.
So, what are India's interests in Sri Lanka, and what do you think is the position of the bilateral relations there?
When we talk about Indian interest in Sri Lanka in today's evolving regional landscape, this relationship has become even more consequential. Opportunities for collaboration have notably expanded in recent years. For example, India and Sri Lanka are now working on bilateral power grid connectivity, paving the way for renewable energy trade across the Park Strait. On the defense front, cooperation is deepening under the Colombo Security Conclave, a regional initiative that includes India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Through this platform, India is helping build capacity on maritime security, counterterrorism, and cybersecurity, positioning itself as a reliable and non intrusive security partner. Economically, India's interests are clear. It seeks to maintain strategic influence in the Indian Ocean, counterbalancing growing Chinese presence and deepening integration through trade, port, and infrastructure, as well as people to people connections. India's investments in Sri Lanka's energy, transport, and retail sectors have grown in recent years, supported by a crisis era financial aid that helped stabilize the island's economy. One emerging vector of engagement is healthcare diplomacy. During the COVID 19 pandemic, India provided critical vaccines and medical supplies. Going forward, this can be expanded through medical tourism, pharma cooperation, and training programs for healthcare professionals. This can be a starting point for strengthening soft power while meeting real needs on the ground. Overall, the diplomatic trajectory looks cautiously positive. Strategic trust between the two nations is improving, economic linkages are steadily growing, but sustaining this momentum will require India to strike a careful balance between remaining an active partner while also respecting Sri Lanka's sovereignty and political sensitivities.
Thank you so much for those insights on Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's position, as you pointed out, is very important geostrategically, and India would like to have a friend in Sri Lanka. Though this NIK was not in favor of India having its investments in Sri Lanka, but I think that position is changing, given that India also had bilateral meetings with this NIK, even when he was not in power. So I think India still is right there, and I think we can have a better relation with Sri Lanka, countering China's influence in the region, because of course we want an open and safe Indo-Pacific. So thank you so much for your insights.